We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
We're very comfortable in chaos. Supply chain wreaked havoc on our industry, both sides of the fence for years. COVID, all of the things. So, I think, unfortunately, I think it's just an extension of something that we're already very familiar with, which is uncertainty. Start dialing for products now, I think is the best thing I can the best thing I can offer on that side.
Yeah. What's going on here? Do we have a plan?
Plan? No, I got some tactical goals and a rough approach.
A rough approach? Oh, well, that's terrific. Thank God we got that, because we don't have backup video feeds or working comms.
Welcome to my world.
CEDIA heads to Capitol Hill. Maybe they're going to do something about tariffs, maybe not, but they're also going to talk about the CHIPS Act and also the best way to get fresh young people into the residential and AV industry. All that and more next on ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 480, recorded Monday, April 21st, 2025. Comfortable with chaos. This is ResiWeek, the weekly look at the residential side of the AV industry. My name is not Matt Scott. I am Tim Albright, the deeper voiced, shorter, better haired version of AVNation. How are you? With us to talk about residential is Katye McGregor-Bennett from KMB Communications. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me back. It's good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you. And also with us, one of the best guitarists in the AV industry, Mr. Robert Archer from CE Pro. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Maybe the only.
Well, you're not the only. You guys have a band.
Yeah.
Mitch Klein is
He's a guitar journalist, guitar playing journalist,
there you go.
who also does.
Gotcha. Okay.
As we know. See, there you go.
I'm not used to thinking on Mondays, which is when we're recording this. So yes, you're a guitarist, journalist in the AV industry. Got it. Yes, that you are probably the only one of those. All right. So we've got a couple of stories this week, and the first couple kind of conglomerate into one. First of all, we're going to talk about tariffs. I know you're shocked. Here in the States, the U.S. government, April 2nd, put on a bunch of different tariffs to nearly every country in the world, including a couple islands that have nothing but penguins. And then a few weeks later, they said, wait, here's some exceptions on various electronics coming from different places. Crestron was one of the companies that came out and said, okay, based on the April 2nd, here's your new tariff surcharge. They came back last week and said, wait a minute, because of the exceptions, here's your new tariff charge. This is a very fluid situation. It is a phrase I am afraid I'm going to get tired of saying, much like unprecedented times in 2020. But this is where we are. So 5% May 1st is the new Crestron tariff. ADI is also putting out some their own tariff language. A couple of manufacturers of note are still watching the situation. On the commercial side, you've got Shure and a couple others that are still kind of watching. They have not announced anything yet. Epson has announced some, and then they pulled them back, and so we're kind of waiting on their new definitions. But Katye, we're going to start with you. The overarching idea here and the overarching question is, what is going to be the long-term and maybe even the short-term impact of not just the tariffs, but of all of these charges and recharges and kind of the back and forth when it comes to an industry, whether that's construction or it's consumer electronics, that thrives on stability?
It thrives on stability, but we're very comfortable in chaos. so there's a little bit of, we've gotten so familiar and so used to working in a pretty chaotic environment. Supply chain wreaked havoc on our industry, both sides of the fence for years. COVID, all of the things. So, I think, unfortunately, I think it's just an extension of something that we're already very familiar with, which is uncertainty and needing to be really dynamic in the day-to-day. That's kind of no, really, Katye, that's enlightening. What it really comes down to now is the time to have really clear communication I come at this from the communicator standpoint. So now is the time to have very clear communication. And part of that is looking at shortening up timelines for things that you have certain criteria for, contractual criteria, warranty criteria, payment term criteria, those sort of things. You need to be taking a really close look at those. That's what's in your control, and start tightening up the language around those things to make sure that you're protected. And then obviously, as the tariff conversation continues to evolve, is making sure that anything you're putting out there has that clarity and the short timeline that allow you to, save your proverbial butts. I think that's unfortunately what all of this is. There are brands are starting to make announcements, as we were talking about before we started recording. There's brands that have made the commitment to make an announcement, and now they're pulling those back. Right. And so, there's going to be a lot more of that and I think it's just going to be for the next really foreseeable future, but the next couple of months are going to be really bumpy in that regard. So, I think the challenge is going to be for systems designers, consultants, specifiers who have a little bit of a longer term and are looking at products and making interim buying decisions, not really knowing what the reality is of, are those products here? Are they landed? Are they in the U.S. already? Or do they need to be inbound from somewhere else? And that, start dialing for products now, I think, is the best thing I can the best thing I can offer on that side.
Yeah. Robert, you've been around for a minute, and obviously all three of us lived through the 2020. Katie mentioned the supply chain issues. What is going to be the longer term impact of these tariffs and of the different charges that the U.S. government's looking to put on?
Well, I think the impact that inflation has had on the economy over the past several years post-pandemic, it will probably have a similar effect where the prices come up and they're not likely to go back down. And that means that's more money out of consumers' pockets to spend on these systems. And that could impact the breadth of these systems. It could impact system design. Maybe it impacts dealers in the way that they order product and manage their inventories.
All right. So a part of this is also, I said that we've got 2 or 3 stories kind of mushed together here. Another one of the stories that Mitchell grabbed was about CEDIA going to Washington again. And CEDIA, the organization, went to D.C., talked with a bunch of lawmakers. Part of the conversation was about tariffs. Part of it was also about workforce development. But Robert, I want to start with you on this. You can't exactly say, oh, CEDIA went to Washington and now there's exclusions. It's not entirely. I mean, I love our friends at CEDIA. They don't have quite the pull that, let's say, I don't know, Google does, or somebody with deeper pockets when it comes to lobbying efforts. But what does it say about our industry, but also about CEDIA as the organization, trying to at least get their arms wrapped around this, number one, for their members to understand, but also so the lawmakers can get the full impact, hopefully, of the economic impact of these, of these policies.
I think it speaks well of the trade group in that they're fighting for the little guy. They realize that most of its members, most of the industry is made up of small businesses, and they're the ones that need the most support during these times. It's one thing for a large business that maybe has a lot of financial stability to be able to navigate what's currently going on, but a small business may not have those types of resources, and so it shows that CEDIA is standing up for the little guy. Katie,
same kind of question is what sort of impact can CEDIA hope to have here, and what does it say about the organization?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with Bob. I think there's the benefit of CEDIA being the advocate for the little guy, and Cal. But I think more importantly is just the frequency of the visitation now at this point. So this is a multi-year commitment that CEDIA has to going to the Hill on this particular day. I think it's just whatever aligned that had all of the policymakers in the same space at the same time, or CEDIA got a little bit more airtime. Gosh, if we could schedule that ahead next year, that would be fantastic. But I think it's just something that I often say when I'm talking with clients is it's just having another voice in the room at the right time, right? And so on this day, there were many voices available to be in the room when conversations were being had that have an impact on our industry. And I think what that illustrates for me is I'm stoked and excited that our industry was there and represented. When you look at the picture, I mean, there's 20 people there. Again, it takes a village, and if the same 20 people are the same 20 people that keep going, great, thank you. We need more than 20 people going one day a year to really move the meter. And it's that rising tide scenario, and it's asking a lot when it's like we were just talking about. We're heading into another major layer of chaos and confusion, but one day a year, and I say this of myself as well, because it never occurred to me that I should clear my schedule and go. Right. So shame on Katie. But, you guys too. Shame on all of us. We should all really be thinking about showing force and showing a much bigger number, because when 20 go, that sends a message. And if 100 were to go next year and maybe 200 the following year, what kind of a message is that sending? It's not just on CEDIA,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is the strength in numbers part of that, right? And one of the other things that they were advocating for was a continuation of something called the CHIPS Act. And really quickly, if you're not familiar with what the CHIPS Act is, something that was passed during the Biden administration that the Trump administration has talked about kind of mothballing and getting rid of. But very briefly, the CHIPS Act is incentivizing chip production in the United States. And there's a couple things happening there. One is on the defense side. There was certainly a move during COVID to say, oh, hey, let's not be in this situation again, this situation meaning the supply chain, especially when it comes to our nation's defense. Let's make chips in the States. Okay. On the face of it, that's a great idea. Okay. I think that's something that most of us can agree on. In practice, it takes years to build a foundry for chips. And I do mean years. And it has to be in a very specific location. It has to be pretty free of any sort of seismic earthquake activity. And if it's not, then there's certain things you have to do to make sure that the machinery itself doesn't shake when it earthquakes. Second thing, you have to have a ton of water. And no, when I say a ton, I'm not talking about 2,000 pounds. I'm talking about 100 times that amount of water for cooling of the machinery and all that jazz. Okay, so understand that. It's a great idea. It takes a lot of work to do. Right. And it doesn't happen overnight. However, there are folks that have already started doing it. They've already broken ground. They're looking at locations. And they were doing that based on the promise of the federal government to say, yes, we're going to help you with that. And we're going to offset some of those costs, not unlike anything else that the U.S. government does. And there's an old joke about, I'll not grow corn for government subsidies. It's a joke from like the 50s or 60s. But Katie, when we look at, both domestic electronic, production, as well as some of the other things that CEDIA was advocating for, including the Science Act, bringing things here to the States is one side of that. Domestic production, domestic electronic production, domestic chip production. But I guess the simple ask here is that something from a cost standpoint that the electronics, the CI industry has the appetite for, because a chip made in Dayton, Ohio is going to be more expensive than one made in Vietnam?
Yeah, that's oh, my friend, that is a many, many, many layered conversation. The best I can say is look at the phone on your desk, your mobile phone. And I just happen to have an iPhone, right? And what it cost me today, where it's manufactured today, is one thing. No, that phone is never getting manufactured here in the US. And if it does, is it going to be a $10,000 phone? Potentially. I'm just making it up. But seriously, I mean, neither of those things are ever going to happen. So I don't know how we really get to the other side of this. I honestly don't know how, because it's one thing to say that we're going to boost manufacturing, but where are the people going to come from that are going to make the stuff? And we don't have the ability to make the robotics as advanced now as they need to be to replace the humans that don't exist even in, go anywhere right now. I mean, that's the bigger problem that I struggle with. And, I usually try to bring the air of positivity, but you brought the wrong topic to me.
I asked you the wrong question for that.
You asked me the wrong question. I can't. But I mean, seriously, I think it really is the bigger issue is can we afford it? No, we really can't, because it's been a race to zero thus far. And the solution to zero has been offshore. So now that it's a completely different equation. We don't have models for that. And we certainly don't have enough inventory here in the U.S. to protect us from the inevitable, so.
All right, Robert, same question. Does the industry have the appetite for U.S.-made goods when it comes to electronics?
No, but based on exactly what Katie was saying, that the horse has left the barn, or whatever stupid cliche you want to roll out there, that it should have been addressed decades ago, literally. The cost of paying labor, the healthcare costs, the safety cost of working in a facility that meets current OSHA safety standards, that's going to cost nothing but money. And what that would do to the cost of everything from an iPhone to a new computer to a new TV, prices would go up exponentially. Nobody could ever afford any of that stuff. It should have been addressed decades ago, literally. It's too late now.
One of the other aspects that CEDIA was advocating for, and that's workforce development. And Robert also has an article in CE Pro talking about that very thing with the folks at Big AV. And one of the things that Charles Rudolph and his the founder of Big AV is looking at is ways to get, quite frankly, to get peers to help bring in new folks, right? And this is a long conversation, but Robert, first and foremost, what was one of the things about Big AV that struck you as being something that the industry needs and probably can learn from?
Charles Rudolph is the co-founder of Big AV, and he's founder of Geeks with Hammers in Indianapolis. He's a really inspiring guy, and his positivity, his hunger for knowledge is really inspiring. And his goal of trying to unify different demographics and bring them into the smart home community is admirable, because at the end of the day, his goal addresses something that we really need in the industry, which is labor. And I remember him when I was interviewing him. Charles had said to me that he'd like to get into the inner cities to recruit labor from the inner cities. And I would almost bet, I can't speak to this, but I would guess that hardly any of the labor that the industry employs comes from the inner city. And there's a whole group of people that would probably love to find gainful employment as long as we can provide them with the training so they can have the necessary skills.
Katie, same kind of question is again, this is a conversation that we have had, not just on AVNation, but the industry has had, as long as I've paid attention to the industry, is how to get new folks, how to get the next generation, how to get young people interested in the industry. One of the things that the folks at Big AV was looking at is they're almost to a 500 member organization, which is a significant milestone. But how do we get groups like that? And Robert did a good job here of highlighting them, right? But how do we get them to, where we're able to amplify that and help them get more people and get more young people into the industry?
Structure. And I answer quickly. It's not, which is not to suggest that it's simple whatsoever. But one of the things that I really appreciate about the story, and Bob, bravo to you guys for bringing this to the surface. But it sounds as though Emerald has jumped in to help provide some support, which will provide some structure. They provided space at CEDIA Expo so that they can have a meeting there. The article alludes to other support as well. I have no idea. But getting organizations involved that can provide some sponsorship funding, some sponsorship resources to provide structure. There's a grassroots efforts like this, there's a point at which they become really difficult to progress forward. And so, oftentimes a great grassroots effort will just fizzle out. And it's extremely unfortunate when that happens, because quite honestly, oftentimes it's just because lack of resources to get the word out that you needed help. I think Tim, great job in bringing this to the surface, because I think this is a perfect illustration of these guys have done a great job of getting it this far, and for Emerald to help support it in order for it to continue and to get to the answer to your question is how to then provide more of this around the nation so that we've got a stronger grassroots effort. We need more structure. We need some more support. So, could Emerald pitch in a little bit more, or maybe there's a matching opportunity for, I don't know, CEDIA? Want to come to the table on this? Maybe there's something HTA can do, something like that. Maybe some of the brands that are looking to achieve a national footprint, Daisy, for instance, Bravis, some of the integrators that are acquiring more locations across the U.S. I'm calling all of you guys out if you haven't figured it out. But, you're establishing a bigger footprint, you're going to need more bodies too. So as my mama used to say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Everybody needs talent. And so if we could all lock arms and scrum and move it forward, we've got a much stronger likelihood of getting the number of bodies that we need sooner than later. And I think that's the thing. So it takes structure. It's not easy to do, but if there's more motivation, more people behind it, it can take that form and get that structure that it needs faster.
Let me ask a dangerous question here, because it's dangerous because I didn't have it in my notes and it just popped in my brain. So that's typically dangerous.
I'm not volunteering.
There is that's my caveat and my warning. There's a movement, especially among the Gen Zs and folks coming up behind them. I'll say an anti-college, or at least an anti-college debt movement, right? Where they have seen, previous generations, whether that's millennials or Gen Xers, buy into the promise of you go to a 4-year college, you get a degree, you're going to have a better life, right? Blah, 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 blah. And there's a generation coming up saying, you know what, that's not entirely true. Right. It just hasn't panned out that way. And you've got folks that are saddled with hundreds or a couple $100,000 in debt. So they're looking at trade schools. They're looking at careers where they can get into without either a whole lot of money or none at all, and get apprenticed. To do that, and I'll pick on the IBEW really briefly. A lot of respect for them. I say picking is a term of love and endearment. The IBEW as a nationwide union, they bring in people and they train them how to be electricians, right? You've got a process, to Katie's point. You have a structure. You come in, you do this, and 5-10 years later, you are a full-fledged electrician with a card and everything else. And you know how much you paid in college? Zero, right? You have a pretty good job, good paying job, and you didn't pay anything for it. But you did. You paid it with 10 years of your life, right? You paid it with time and with sweat and with effort. But these kids are doing it. These young people are signing up left and right. Who would be the mechanism, or is it more localized, like the big AV folks, to do something like that? So is there? And I guess I'll pick on CEDIA and I'll pick on Avista here, right? Avista is the commercial side of the commercial equivalent of CEDIA. They're two separate organizations. But is it a CEDIA? Is it an Avista? Or is it more, these folks like Big AV that are more regionalized?
The two groups need to settle on some kind of curriculum and maybe start presenting it on Capitol Hill as another career path for these kids. Tim, you're absolutely right. My daughter, a couple of years ago, she's in college now, and we were floored at the amount of money it costs, even after they discount it and they give you these. It's insane. And we have a son that'll be starting that process pretty soon too. But it's intimidating for these kids and their families, and nobody wants to go hundreds of thousands of dollars in the debt, knowing that you're probably never going to pay it off, knowing that it's probably going to prevent you from buying a home. So why not look at an alternative career path?
Katie, does CEDIA need to roll out their own education spots, in the NFL cities, or is this something that we need to lean on, the local integrators and the more regionalized things?
No, I think this definitely needs to be industry based. This is where the C point above structure. So without structure, it would become mayhem, and more importantly, it would just become everyone's version of the thing that should be done right, and everyone's version of what's right.
That's fair.
So I think that it really should come from an industry base. Is that realistic? I don't know. Not so much.
Now you're asking dangerous questions.
Yeah. So no, I think that's asking. I think that's asking a lot. But goals. I think it's we as an industry, combined industry, have to start having these conversations and actually moving things forward. Try and fail is better than not try and complain about it. I mean, it's fun, but. Use of time.
But it's not. I think it has to trickle down from the federal level. If you think about like trade schools get curricula, or even like here in, I'm in the Boston area. We have a college in Boston, Northeastern, and Northeastern has a co-op program. That would be the perfect training ground for young people to enter into school, intern with one of those Avixa type companies if they want to do the commercial side of the market, or maybe a local integrator on the resi side in the Boston area, and find their career path and start in the industry.
Well, I'm actually going to send my buddy Chris Hope, who started the Loop Lab in your neck of the woods, Robert, on the commercial side, right? But I'm going to send in this article and say, you need to connect with these folks because having, for a couple of different reasons. First of all, the Loop Lab is a fantastic organization. They do take students from the inner city and they train them in how to do commercial AV as well as production, broadcast production and stuff like that. But maybe to help out, right, the folks that have been doing the big AV, to kind of say, hey, this is what we've done, and maybe coordinate together, because they could probably learn something from each other. And Katie says, good for the goose, good for the gander. Mine is, rising tide raises all ships. If they could help each other out, I think that would be great. So
I think it is worth noting to get people to start thinking about it. There are technical colleges around the U.S. that actually, some of them have actual home automation courses, and there's one down in Florida, Pinellas Technical College. Somebody was just asking me about this last week. What was that one that you had mentioned that actually has coursework? So make a note of that. If this conversation's been interesting to you, it's pcsb.org. Go and take a look at their home automation courses. It's like a 750-hour piece. It's really cool. And I don't know how many more there are around the U.S., so you could let me know how many more you find. That would be great.
Yeah.
Look for it. But it's really cool. It's like it's going to take more of those. Got to start somewhere, I suppose. So.
Absolutely. All right. That'll do it. Mr. Robert Archer from CE Pro. Welcome. Thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or CE Pro?
They could go to CE Pro's website at cepro.com or they could also visit me on Instagram at BA1, the number 1, Boston.
And are you playing guitar on Instagram?
There are some videos of me making a lot of noise, yes.
That would be worth it to me. So, all right. Katye McGregor-Bennett, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you or KMB?
Absolutely. Just find us on the Sphere. Look for KMB Communications. We're the one with the mountain in our logo, or Katye McGregor-Bennett on any of the platforms. LinkedIn, it's really the best place to go, but have more fun over on Facebook.
My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me anywhere. I am not nearly as entertaining as Matt Scott, as you have just witnessed. But go by the website, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Mitchell has just put together 2 brand new shows. One is our higher education show called EdTech, as well as our career. Speaking of careers, our career show called name just went out of my head. It's AV Career Mastermind. Good Lord. It's Monday. I typically don't do this on Mondays, so my brain is not yet functioning. But yeah, go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation. Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.